The sea is calm tonight. A soft tide rolls in like someone gently rearranging blankets in their sleep. The stars are late, or maybe just lazy, scattered across the velvet sky like crumbs after a midnight snack. You're standing on the damp stone edge of an island too small to have a proper name, the kind of place even cartographers collectively agree to ignore. There's a breeze, but it's more like a sigh than a gust, tired, ancient, and vaguely scented with brine and lavender. From somewhere inland, a flute plays badly and bravely, possibly by a goat herder who doesn't know he has an audience. It's fine. You're not judging. Everyone starts somewhere. The year is, well, fuzzy. Somewhere in the dusty folds of what we now call mythic time, where gods are moody, heroes rarely bathe, and everything smells vaguely of olive oil and destiny. You are wrapped in a loose linen tunic, your feet bare, and your mind finally slowing. You've arrived at the edge of something old, older than drama masks, older than Plato, older even than family arguments over how to pronounce gyro. Welcome to the Aegean, where the waves are wise and the gods are nosy. Tonight's story begins beneath the waves, in the hushed realm of the sea nymphs, the Nereids, 50 daughters of the sea god Nereus, which sounds exhausting, but they manage. Among them is a less discussed figure, the one most fond of silence, Galeen. Her name means calm sea, but ironically, she's the reason lullabies exist, though no one ever remembers to credit her. Typical. You'll meet Galeen in just a moment. She's tuning a shell harp at the bottom of a coral garden, waiting for her cue. But first, gentle reminder from your resident sleepy narrator. You probably won't make it through this day, and that's okay. If your eyes grow heavy, let them. You won't miss the ending. The sea doesn't mind repeating herself. If you're awake long enough, feel free to like, subscribe, and whisper into the comments. Where are you listening from? What time is it where you are? Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You drift downward, the island slipping away behind you as though it was never quite real. The sea opens up like a page in a worn scroll, inky blues and soft greens folding into each other. Below, Galeen hums. She sits cross-legged on a bed of anemone silk, tuning strings made from the spun hair of drowned poets, or so the legends go. Historians still debate whether that's metaphor or just Greek-level dramatics. Her harp rests gently against her knees, its frame carved from driftwood and fossilized seahorse bone. It hums, even in silence. Galeen is not like her sisters, who ride dolphins and braid sailor dreams into storms. She prefers quiet. While Thetis meddles in prophecy and Amphitrite manages Poseidon's calendar, Galeen listens to sleeping fish and composes melodies no one hears. Not because they're bad, they're too good. Her lullabies work too well. Once, she played a single note and accidentally put a ship's crew to sleep for 3 days. The Kraken didn't even bother. It left a polite note and swam away. Galeen doesn't seek praise. She wants peace, and she wants one thing above all: a song that helps everyone sleep. Not just mortals, not just sea creatures, but even her bickering family of gods and godlets. That, dear listener, is your historical fact for tonight. Ancient Greeks believed the Nereids could calm storms, not with strength, but with song. There's a myth, obscure, half-whispered, barely clinging to the bottom of a papyrus scroll, about Galeen crafting the first bedtime song. Not to lull a baby, but to hush Olympus itself. Yes, even Ares, even that guy. But before that song is born, she must collect the sounds of the world. The thrum of turtle shells, the flutter of eel wings, the soft hiss of heated sand after sundown. And so she waits, tuning, listening, dreaming of silence. Far above, a fisherman sneezes into the sea and blames Poseidon. Typical. You awaken, or rather, you continue not quite sleeping, floating through a watery corridor of sunken ruins. Marble columns, toppled by time or mild divine tantrums, litter the seabed like chess pieces from a game no one remembers playing. Your guide is not Galeen. She's busy, still tweaking chord 7 of her melody and scowling at a barnacle for throwing off the acoustics. No, tonight you're led by a jellyfish with very firm opinions and absolutely no sense of direction. You glide past a temple with its roof intact, a rarity in this part of myth. Inside, mosaics flicker with ancient magic, animated scenes of sea battles, crab duels, and an inexplicably well-dressed squid reading a scroll. Here's where it gets odd. One tile shows Galeen holding a small shell to a titan's ear. The caption, long faded, might have said, "Music calms the monstrous," or possibly, "Do not microwave." Translation is an art, not a science. Your historical fact of the night. In some Greek myths, sea deities like Galeen were invoked by sailors before sleep to ensure calm waters overnight. You pass a statue garden next. Well, it's technically a pile, but it feels like a garden. Limestone philosophers, arms missing but dignity intact, lean eternally toward the west. One clutches a stone scroll with the inscription, "Sleep is the soul's soft rehearsal." Obscure cultural tidbit? Here you go. Some ancient Greeks believed certain sea nymphs could sing dreams directly into your ears. Not visions, not omens, just full-on musical bedtime narratives. Think lullabies as podcasts, but sung by immortal introverts. A sudden hush falls. Even the jellyfish pauses. Ahead, a yawning trench in the ocean floor. It looks like a bite mark from a creature best left out of polite conversation. The trench breathes softly, in out. The water around it pulses like a slow heartbeat. Galeen arrives now, harp in hand, gaze soft. She floats beside you and says nothing at first, just lets the silence do its work. Then, almost shyly, she plays 3 notes. They barely exist, like the memory of a lullaby your grandmother might have hummed once while folding linens. The trench exhales, peacefully. "That's one," she whispers. It's the first note of her song, the beginning of sleep itself, carved from choral chords and godly stubbornness. "Come," she says. "There's more to gather." You nod, or at least your dream self does. Real you is already halfway to sleep, eyelids heavy like olives on a branch. Before you drift too far, historians still debate whether Galeen was ever truly worshipped, or just a poetic placeholder for good weather. Either way, she's real tonight, and so are you, somewhere between a myth and a nap, being gently folded into ancient music. More soon, when you're ready. The sea turns darker now, not ominous, but deep velvety, like the inside of a conch shell at night. You and Galeen travel through this twilight water with the hush of old prayers. Your body feels light, like you're made of sea foam and stories. Above you, far above, the surface is a distant shimmer. Down here, the ocean has its own rules. Time thickens. Sounds slow down like they're stretching before bedtime. Galeen hums softly as she moves, barely disturbing the water. Her harp glows faintly, bioluminescent strings responding to her touch like sleepy fireflies. She pauses beside a cavern wall, running her fingers along the mineral-lined ridges. "This one," she says. "It remembers thunder." She plucks a chord. The cave answers with a soft boom, echoing like a drum muffled under 10 wool blankets. It's not frightening. It's ancient, reassuring, like the sound of rain just as you fall asleep. Distant, rhythmic, reliable. That's note 2 of her song. The echo of earth wrapped in water. Your historical fact for this section. The Greeks believed caves, especially sea caves, were sacred spaces of prophecy and healing, often associated with nymphs or minor deities. This one is no exception. Somewhere deeper in, a snake yawns. You do not disturb it. Snakes, in Greek mythology, are both sacred and dramatic. Best let them nap. Galeen turns to you and smiles. Barely. She's not really a smiling type, more of a gentle exhale through the nose kind of person. But it's warm all the same. She gestures upward now, toward a field of drifting seaweed and sand dunes. You rise with her, passing clusters of slow-moving fish who look like they're thinking about sleep but not quite ready to commit. You come to a forgotten shipwreck, mostly intact, its hull split like a cracked walnut. Inside, silence. Heavy, respectful silence, as if the sea itself is holding its breath around it. Galeen drifts inside. You follow, ducking under a hanging rope that could have once been part of a sail, or someone's grand plan. In a corner, a harp rests. Not hers, but one older still. Barnacles cling to it like sleepy children. Galeen kneels and brushes them away. "This one belonged to a mortal," she says softly, "who tried to lull the gods." She strums a chord. It wavers slightly off-key. She smiles at that. There's beauty in imperfection, especially at bedtime. That's note 3. A mortal's hope that music might matter. Your obscure cultural tidbit for this section. There's a lesser-known myth about a Cretan sailor who played music nightly to the stars, hoping the constellations would guide him home. The gods ignored him, but the stars didn't. His ship was found years later, perfectly aligned with Orion. Back outside the wreck, Galeen listens again, to nothing, to everything. "It's close," she says. "The next sound is close." You wait. The sea waits. A crab sneezes. No one acknowledges it. You probably won't make it through this part of the journey, and honestly, that's the goal. It's darker now, sea night, that strange hour when even the coral seems to close its eyes. You're drifting along a soft current, guided by Galeen and the lull of her half-finished melody. She's humming as she goes, collecting the silence of the deep the way a baker collects flour dust from the air, casually, skillfully, as if it was always meant to be gathered. You pass a sleeping whale. Yes, sleeping. Upside down, its great eye gently closed. Tiny fish drift around it like forgotten dreams. Galeen stops. "Here," she whispers. "This is the fourth." She raises her harp and plays just one note. Low, long, and barely there. The whale sighs in response. That's note 4. The exhale of a dreaming creature larger than most regrets. It's not loud. It's not meant to be, but it settles in your chest like a warm stone. You feel it more than hear it. Your limbs relax. Your mind quiets, just a little more. Historical fact time. Ancient Greek sailors often told stories of sea creatures who could lull ships into peaceful drifts simply by breathing near them. These weren't sirens, just big old souls who believed in rest. Galeen floats on, her hands now glowing gently with the echoes she's collected so far. "It needs contrast," she mutters, more to herself than you. A sharpness to hold the soft. Ahead is a reef shaped like a lyre. Coincidence? Or overly poetic geological formation? Historians still debate whether coral reefs were ever named after instruments, or if that's just something romantic scroll writers made up. Galeen taps the reef. It responds with a plink, sharp and twinkling, like someone knocking politely on a xylophone made of seashells. "That's better," she says. 5. She stores the sound inside the harp, like a pearl placed in a box. As you move through the reef, the fish here are busier, less sleepy, more like gossiping grandmothers whispering in colors. One follows you briefly, then loses interest and swims into a sponge. Galeen stops again. This time she doesn't play. She listens, and then you hear it too. A memory. Faint, familiar, maybe your own, maybe someone else's. A mother's voice humming off-key. A window open to a summer night. The crackle of something baking in the next room. Galeen turns. "You heard that too?" You nod or dream you do. "That's 6. She doesn't explain further. Your cultural tidbit here. The Greeks believed memory lived in the sea. The river Mnemosyne, mother of the muses, was said to flow beneath the world and surface only through dreams. As Galeen rises again, she looks tired, but not in a bad way. The kind of tired you feel after a good day's work, or after folding warm blankets with a storm outside and no place to be. "We're halfway," she says softly. "You are. But you're also warm and still and slowly becoming part of the lullaby yourself. Now rest if you haven't already, or continue when you're ready." Up ahead, the water glows faintly with a kind of impossible light. It's not from the sun. Sunlight hasn't been part of this story for a while. No, this glow is older, warmer, like the soft shimmer of candlelight remembered from a dream. Galeen leads you into a grove. Yes, a grove underwater. Seagrass arches like trees, tall and thin, their leaves swaying with slow, rhythmic grace. Pearlescent anemones bloom at their bases, each pulsing faintly like sleepy fireflies synchronized to the tempo of an invisible lullaby. She says, "This is where songs go when they're too tired to finish." And it makes perfect sense. In that underwater logic your waking mind would probably question, but your sleepy mind lovingly embraces. You walk beside her now, yes, walk. The ground here is solid, or it wants to be. Sand packed so tight it holds your steps like footprints in a dream. You leave no trail. You make no sound. Galeen finds a small stone pedestal, nestled between two swaying stalks of seagrass. She sits, adjusts the strings of her harp, and then, without warning, laughs. "Zeus once tried to write a lullaby," she says, like it's the punchline of a joke. You wait. It was just thunder, followed by silence. The silence was the best part. And that's your cheeky joke number one. She plays the seventh note now. It's the sound of something comforting failing spectacularly and still somehow working. It's the musical equivalent of tucking yourself in with the blanket upside down but deciding not to fix it. Historical fact for this section. Ancient Greek music theory was astonishingly advanced. They used mathematical ratios to create scales and modes, and believed different modes could influence a listener's emotions or moral character. Some songs were even prescribed like medicine. Galeen's harp, if it obeys any mode at all, is likely the Hippolytean, a soft, descending scale said to make men weep and warriors lay down arms, ideally not at the same time. A gentle current brings in the eighth sound, the laughter of children playing just out of sight. No children are visible, of course, but the laughter arrives anyway, carefree, unbothered by physics, a sound so pure it wraps around you like a soft shawl. Echoes from the land, Galeen whispers. They wander far. Your obscure cultural tidbit for this section. Some scholars believe lullabies in ancient Greece were first created by enslaved Thracian women who used their native melodies to soothe noble infants. Songs that carried both love and sorrow in equal measure. Galeen seems to hear the sadness, too. Every lullaby is a secret someone didn't want to keep. She plucks another chord, letting it drift upward, where it mingles with the children's laughter and the silence that follows it. Then, with great effort, she rises from the pedestal. The harp feels heavier now. "So do your eyelids," she says. "Two more notes." You nod. Maybe. The path leads through a canyon of coral, sharp at the tips but softened by time. Faded reds and blues decorate the walls, like a cathedral built by forgotten sea gods with a fondness for quiet beauty. Your footsteps sound like nothing now. You are possibly a thought. Galeen stops before a strange sight. An enormous anchor, rusted and tangled in seaweed. Around it, dozens of jars, amphorae, lie scattered like broken dreams. Some are intact, others are cracked, leaking out invisible memories. She kneels beside one and taps gently. Out pours a lullaby, not hers, different, rougher, deeper. A man's voice, aged and low, singing in a dialect you don't recognize. It's not scary. It's full of longing, like someone singing to a fire that went out too soon. She catches the note in her harp. "That's 9, she says. "Almost complete." You notice now, the harp itself is changing. Not in shape, but in presence. It's heavier in the water, glowing more, buzzing faintly, like it contains the sighs of everyone who has ever just wanted to rest. Here's your historical fact. The earliest written musical notation from ancient Greece dates to the 2nd century BCE and was etched into stone above a grave. It's a hymn to a muse and includes the line, "While you live, shine, have no grief at all." The tune has been reconstructed. Sounds lonely. Colleen places the amphora upright and gives it a respectful nod. "Songs deserve to sit up straight," she says, and you silently agree. As you pass through the canyon, the water grows warmer, not tropical, just home-like. The way the air feels when someone is baking something meant for sharing. You arrive at a round clearing. At its center, a spiral of smooth stones, laid like a labyrinth. Colleen steps into the spiral. Each step she takes emits a note. No harp now, just her movement, unlocking sound. Step 1, the whisper of sand. Step 2, a yawn, not yours, the sea's. Step 3, the creak of old wood. Step 4, the 10th note, the final note, and it's simple. It's the sound of letting go, a breath out, a sigh after a long day, a door closing gently behind you, knowing you won't need it again until morning. Colleen stands at the center of the spiral. Her harp pulses softly with all 10 notes inside it, swirling like fireflies in a jar. You've walked with her this far. You're part of the song now. Not a note exactly, but maybe a harmony, maybe a pause. Every lullaby needs a pause. Your obscure tidbit for this section. In one obscure fragment, an ancient Greek poet suggested that sea nymphs did not sleep, but instead entered a state of gentle forgetting that resembled the sleep of mortals, but without dreams. Colleen's eyes close. Yours might too. She says nothing, but the lullaby begins to play. Not loud, not urgent, but present, and that's enough. The lullaby drifts across the spiral like the scent of something you forgot you loved. Maybe warm fig bread, or sun-dried linen, or the specific air after a storm in late summer. You remain still because movement feels like an interruption now. Even Colleen doesn't move. The harp plays by itself, drawing from the memory of your footsteps. The amphora's echo, the underwater groves, the silence after thunder. It's not a melody with structure. It's not something you can hum. It's like the sound of remembering something comforting too slowly to speak it aloud. You breathe, whether through gills, dreams, or the grace of ancient myth. No one's quite sure. Colleen opens her eyes. You've heard it, she says, not asking. You nod. You'll forget most of it, she adds. That tracks. You begin walking again, but this time the harp follows you. It doesn't float. It walks. It has legs now, wooden ones. You do not comment on this. You're too far in to flinch at minor details like animate instruments. Historical fact for this section. In the mythic traditions surrounding the Muses, Musical instruments were often considered alive, imbued with the breath of gods. Lyres were sometimes said to remember the hands that played them. Harps, it was whispered, had favorites. The harp doesn't speak, but its notes change slightly when it nears Galeen, brighter, softer. Like how a cat purrs differently for one person. You're no longer walking through choral. The world shifts again, as gently as a dream flipping scenes. Now, you're moving through what looks like the remnants of a vast underwater amphitheater. Broken columns stretch toward a ceiling that isn't there. Mosaics cling to the floors. Fish with wings, turtles wearing crowns, women with long hair twisted into musical notation. Seated on the stone benches, fish, actual fish. Some clap their fins politely, some just stare. One is asleep and snoring tiny bubbles. Galeen clears her throat, steps into the center, and plucks the harp again. The music is slightly different now, closer to laughter, drowsy laughter, like the punchline of a joke whispered by someone who's already half asleep. She plays a lullaby for the fish, and they listen. One rests its chin on a coral cane. Another hums out of tune perfectly. You watch because this part isn't for you, but somehow still includes you. You're the background character in this lullaby, and that feels right. Obscure cultural tidbit. In a lesser-known text attributed to the Pythagoreans, there's a description of underwater acoustics used for spiritual cleansing. Temples submerged near coastal ruins were believed to carry sound differently, as if prayers arrived already half forgiven. Galeen plays. The fish sigh. One falls completely over. No one is alarmed. She finishes the song, and there's no applause. But there is silence, and that's the highest compliment. Songs don't need endings, she tells the harp. They just need rest. The harp doesn't respond, but it sits down beside her perfectly. You walk on because you're still dreaming this, and the dream hasn't faded yet. A long tunnel now, carved from stone that no longer knows it was once above the sea. The walls ripple slightly, not with current, but with memory. You can tell. The air, yes, air now, smells of damp parchment and cold clay. You must have crossed another barrier without noticing. Mythology is like that. Up ahead, torches flicker on walls that haven't seen fire in centuries. Someone relit them for you, or maybe they never went out. You step into what can only be described as a library, not a tidy one, not the kind with neat rows and decimal systems. No, this is the kind of library where scrolls sleep in hammocks and books lean against each other like tired soldiers. Clay tablets are stacked like teacups. One shelf appears to contain only feathers and questions. Galeen whispers, "This is where bedtime stories live when they grow up." You nod, slowly. Makes sense. You pick up a scroll. It unrolls itself. No hands needed. It reads, "To those who seek sleep through knowledge, beware. You might find rest instead." You put the scroll back. Historical fact for this section. In ancient Greece, many believed that knowledge had a rhythm. Philosophers like Plato described memory as a harmony between soul and truth. Certain temples had specific reading rooms where visitors would sleep after reading sacred texts, hoping for divine dreams to reveal insights. This room must be built from that hope. Galeen walks past a stack of stone-bound books and plucks a tiny bronze chime from a hook on the wall. She rings it gently. A door opens in the floor. You descend slowly, by ladder, by spiral, or maybe by falling very politely. You arrive in the Hall of First Dreams. It's just a bed. Just one. Stone frame, seaweed mattress, feather-stuffed pillow, and carved into the frame in tiny patient lettering, Galeen, first of the lullabies, voice of the forgetting tide. She sits on the edge of the bed and says, "This was mine once." You say nothing. You just sit beside her. The harp sits too. It's a little crowded now. That's okay. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some oceanic mythographers believe the sea nymph Galeen wasn't just associated with calm waters, but was also a guardian of lost voices, fragments of songs and whispers that never reached their intended listeners. She lies back. The harp begins to glow again. The lullaby plays, not new notes, but ones you've already heard. Rearranged, slower, like a remix composed by someone who wants you to finally sleep. Galeen closes her eyes. "You won't remember the whole song," she murmurs, "but you'll feel its shape." You lie down too. Your cheek presses to the feather pillow, and it hums. Not music, just comfort. Not every myth has war. Some just want you to rest. You dream, but not the way you expect. No dragons, no dazzling gods, no monsters bent on metaphor. You dream of a laundry line stretched between two fig trees, of sandals forgotten on a smooth, sun-warmed step, of someone, maybe your mother, maybe not, humming as she kneads dough under a pale, humming sky. When you wake, if this counts as waking, you're not in the stone bed anymore. You're on a small wooden raft, gently drifting across a pool that has no visible edges. Water so still it reflects not the stars, but your own eyes blinking back at you. Galeen is gone, but the harp is still here, floating alongside the raft, silent now, waiting. The raft moves on its own, slow and ceremonial, like you're being delivered somewhere important, like you're the bride at a wedding no one else can see. In the distance, torches glow in spiral shapes, whirls of soft orange light in the dark blue gloom. One torch fizzles out and another sparks to life somewhere else, always keeping the exact same number lit. The math of it feels comforting. You don't know where you're going, but you know it's where you're meant to go next. Historical fact for this section. In ancient Greek sleep temples, sacred dreams were often guided by trained priests called iatromants, healers who whispered suggestions into the ears of sleeping patients, hoping to steer their dreams toward divine messages or forgotten memories. You pass under an archway carved into the shape of eyelids. Beneath it, a plaque. Here ends the sea, but not the song. Once through, the raft begins to dissolve. Not dramatically. No bubbles, no sudden splash. It just gives up, like a sigh turning into mist. You're standing again, on solid ground made from pressed sand and scattered pebbles. You think one of them whispers something to your heel, but it's probably your imagination. or a sea beetle with boundary issues. Ahead, a courtyard open to the sky. Vines twist upward in complicated arrangements that almost look like musical notation if you squint. Wind stirs them into lazy motion. And then, quite suddenly, you're not alone. Figures begin to appear. Not with drama. They were always here. You just noticed late. A young man wearing a robe stitched with constellations. A woman whose hair is braided with bones. A child holding a scroll too large for her arms. An old man asleep on a tortoise. You don't speak. You've learned by now that words are not the first language of this place. The harp makes a single note. Not a song, just the equivalent of a raised eyebrow. The others nod. Apparently, you're expected. They lead you not with words, but with small gestures and slow, certain walking into a kind of colonnaded garden. A temple courtyard, but there's no altar, no statues, just wind, flowers that look like sleeping faces, and a central bowl filled with soft black sand. Each of them takes a turn stepping up to the bowl, dipping a finger in the sand, and drawing a single spiral. Then they step back. You're last. You kneel, press your fingertip into the warm sand, and begin to draw your spiral. It looks different, more like a wave curling in on itself. Less perfect, but still accepted. You're handed a cup of something. Smells like figs, milk, and salt. You drink, and everything slows. Not in a dream way, in a this is what time used to feel like way. Obscure cultural tidbit. In a fragmentary pre-Hellenic lullaby recorded on a clay tablet from Crete, there's mention of a mother of tides who sings over sleep to weigh it down like stones in a fishing net. Scholars still debate whether this was a proto-Gallene figure or simply a metaphor for heavy dreams. One of the figures finally speaks. His voice is like gravel poured through honey. We are the ones who remember forgotten songs. You nod. It's not the weirdest job title you've heard today. He smiles. The lullaby you heard, it wasn't the first. It wasn't even hers. He gestures to the harp. She stole it. From the deep. The harp lets out a sound that's somewhere between a hiccup and an offended trill. He shrugs. Or borrowed, depending on your definition of theft. You ask, because now it seems okay to ask, why was it forgotten? The woman with the bone braids answers, because no one wanted to remember it, because sleep isn't useful, and there it is, the reason for all of this, the reason lullabies vanish, the reason you needed this dream. Sleep isn't productive, but it is necessary. And so some sea nymph, some harp, some fish-clapping chorus has to carry that burden, to keep making songs that no one will hum at noon, to make sure someone somewhere drifts off and remembers they're human, even if just for the night. Historical fact for this section. The ancient Greeks believed that Hypnos, the god of sleep, lived in a dark cave where the sun never shone, surrounded by poppies and forgetfulness. It was said that only those who surrendered their plans and ambitions for a while could find their way to his door. The harp begins to glow again. A final song. No words, just warmth, just a cradle made of sound. And then the temple fades. You're not dropped or expelled or pushed. You're gently ungathered, like a mist that forgets to be a cloud. You don't panic. You sleep. You return, if you can call it that, not to a place but a rhythm. You're floating in sleep, but also outside it, like watching a song remember how to hum itself. Tide rises. Not water this time, but something slower, thicker. Memory, fog, the awareness that your shoulders are not tense anymore. Your breath syncs with something ancient and tidal. You realize you're lying in a hammock now, woven from pale seaweed and long threads of someone's hair. The sky above you is colorless, like chalk dust stirred in still water. And somewhere beyond that, a flute plays one note every 30 seconds, just long enough for you to forget it before the next one comes. Galeen is back. She doesn't announce herself. She never does. You sense her more than see her. That soft breeze with a spine, that calm pressure behind your eyes. She's sitting nearby, feeding something to a tiny owl perched on her wrist. You turn your head and find the harp resting beside you. It looks different again. Now it resembles a seashell, curled around itself, humming faintly like a cat in a good dream. Galeen finally speaks. You went far. You nod. Farther than I intended, she adds, but not farther than I hoped. You ask her if you're done now. She pauses. Not done, right? Then she offers you a small stone. It's carved with a symbol you don't recognize, but it feels familiar, like a bedtime story you never knew you'd forgotten. She places it in your hand and says, "This is yours now." Historical fact for this section. In certain Hellenistic cults, small stones inscribed with abstract symbols were placed under pillows as dream tokens, meant to carry messages to Hypnos, the god of sleep, or even guide the sleeper to the afterlife and back. Galeen lies down next to the harp. Neither speaks again. They don't need to. The air fills with the scent of cedar and salt. And you, yes, you, feel something you haven't in a long time. Permission. Permission to rest. To not know. To be nothing but breath and nerve and slow-floating awareness for a little while. Obscure cultural tidbit. Ancient Greek night nurses, often enslaved women, were sometimes taught to hum shadow songs. Improvised lullabies meant only for the ill or the dying. These songs were considered unrepeatable and left behind no lyrics. The wind picks up, curling into your ears like a lullaby with no melody. You exhale. You don't have to know what comes next. You only have to drift. There's a knock, not on a door, on the fabric of your dream. You blink, slowly, and find yourself in a room made entirely of folded linen. The walls breathe when you do. The ceiling pulses like a sleeping whale's belly. And there, standing very still in the corner, is a child. You recognize her. It's the girl from the temple, the one with the too large scroll. She's grown a little, or maybe you've shrunk. She looks at you with eyes that have no hurry in them. Then, she unrolls the scroll. It's blank. I kept it, she says, but the song's gone. You reach for the harp. It's not beside you anymore. You reach for Galeen. Gone too. The child waits. You realize it's your turn. To remember the melody. to hum the first line, to speak something not perfect, not divine, but enough. You open your mouth, and what comes out isn't a lullaby. Not quite. It's the sound of bathwater cooling. The sound of someone turning a page they've already read 3 times. The sound of bare feet on tile in a moonlit kitchen. The child smiles. The scroll begins to fill, not with text, but faint spiral patterns like the ones in the black sand. You don't know what they mean. You don't have to. Historical fact for this section. Clay tablets discovered in Ugarit, an ancient city close to the Greek world, contain the oldest known written musical notation, fragmentary, awkward, full of scribal uncertainty, but enough to reconstruct lullaby-like hymns played on lyres over 3,400 years ago. You sit together for a long time, maybe minutes, maybe centuries. She hums. You hum back, and the linen walls grow softer, thinner, until they're not walls anymore, but veils. Veils lifting in a morning breeze you don't remember asking for. Scholarly uncertainty. Some archaeologists argue that lullabies evolved from morning songs. Others insist the opposite. Still others say the distinction only exists because modern scholars hate letting things be blurry. The child finally speaks again. Do you want to go back? You ask. Back to what? She shrugs. The same old worries, the noisy thoughts, the unfinished grocery list. You think for a moment, then say, not yet. She nods and climbs into your lap, like she's always done this. Together, you hum the world a little softer, just enough to sleep through. You're lying on your side now on something that feels suspiciously like a cloud, but only if clouds were slightly lumpy and had opinions about your posture. The sky above you has gone sepia, not from sunset but memory. The kind of sky you imagine when someone says the word once. You're not alone. Lining both sides of the field, yes, it's a field now, are strange figures. Sleepy gods, faded heroes, mythical nobodies with names lost to moldy papyrus and teacher yawns. One man wears a lion's paw as a hat. Another gently brushes the fur of a 3-headed sheep. They aren't talking, just watching. At the center, a small platform made of driftwood and crumbling marble. Galeen stands atop it again. She looks formal, like she's about to announce the winner of a very relaxed contest. In her hands is a bowl deep, smooth, black as inked stone. She tips it toward you. The liquid inside doesn't spill. It floats. It's not water. It's time, story, that gloopy space between sleep and memory. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't have to. You walk to the platform, your feet making no sound, and peer into the bowl. Your reflection isn't there. Instead, you see scenes, snippets from all the sections before, the harp glinting under moonlight, the bathhouse mural with the surprisingly smug dolphin, that one crab who clearly judged you, a scroll being filled by breath, not ink. The bowl knows the story even if you don't. Galeen finally speaks. The sea nymph sang it first, but now it belongs to you. Historical fact for this section. The ancient Greek word for story, mythos, originally meant simply speech or utterance. It didn't imply falsehood, it meant something spoken aloud, often with gravity or ritual. She places the bowl in your hands. It's heavier than you expect, but steady, like the weight of being known, or at least dreamed about. You carry it back to the edge of the field, and as you do, the crowd begins to hum, softly at first, then all together, a lullaby for the moment before waking. You think, oh no, this might actually work. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some early Hellenistic playwrights snuck lullabies into tragedies, not to soothe the audience, but to create emotional contrast. One fragment features a chorus lulling a ghost to sleep. The bowl pulses with that same rhythm now. A song not meant for understanding, just sinking, just slowing. Galeen watches you go. No wave, just a smile like a warm wool blanket. You step into the final room, or the first one depending on how you count. It looks like a library that has never heard of organization. Scrolls in baskets, scrolls in shoes, a scroll used as a bookmark in another scroll. A cat sleeps atop a pile labeled urgent. The air smells like dust and olive oil. A breeze from nowhere turns pages that don't exist. You sit. No ceremony. No final test. Just peace. Your fingers touch a scroll. It doesn't unroll. Instead, it hums. You hum back, and the scroll dissolves. It becomes mist, memory, music. You try again. This time the scroll opens, blank again. But somehow you know what to do. You take a breath and begin to speak. Softly, slowly, you tell the story of a harp woven from sea hair and lullabies, of a nymph named Galeen who never raised her voice, of you, yes, you who crossed temples, baths, tides, and dreams. You tell it not to be remembered, but because you're finally sleepy enough not to care if you are. Historical fact for this section. The Greeks believed that true dreams came from the gate of horn and false dreams from the gate of ivory. But some later poets joked that dreams just came from too much cheese. The scroll fills with invisible ink. The cat snores faintly. Somewhere far off, a lyre plays a note so soft it doesn't even bother to echo. You lie back on a pile of scrolls, the least efficient mattress in the ancient world, but strangely the most comforting. You let your eyes drift closed, and for the first time in, well, ever, you don't need to ask if you got it right. You already did. You made it here. Scholarly uncertainty. Historians debate whether Galeen was worshipped independently or simply absorbed into the larger pantheon of sea deities. Some argue she wasn't a nymph at all, but a poetic metaphor for calm waters. Others quietly admit they don't care, because she sounds lovely either way. You exhale. The story exhales with you. The scrolls breathe like tidipools, and everything finally lets go. You float now, not through water, not through air, but through thought. The walls of the library melt into coastline. The coastline melts into lullaby, and there she is again, Galeen, but not standing, not teaching, just sitting on a worn rock, her feet barely brushing the foam of the shore. She hums, not to anyone, not for a reason, just because that's what sea nymphs do when no one is watching. You sit beside her. She doesn't turn, but somehow she knows. The tide breathes in. The tide breathes out. You mimic it, not consciously. It's just that your body's finally remembered how. The sky overhead looks like someone painted it with warm milk and old songs. No stars, just suggestions of stars. She reaches into the sand, pulls up a shell, holds it to your ear. You expect crashing waves. Instead, you hear laughter. Children, maybe, or philosophers who forgot what they were arguing about. She pulls up another. This one hums in your own voice, telling a story, half forgotten, half true, fully yours. She hands it to you. You place it in your lap like it might crack. It doesn't, just rests there, like it's always been waiting. Historical fact for this section. In ancient lullabies recovered from fragments of papyri, mothers often sang to their babies about calm seas, soft winds, and gods who slept under olive trees. Sleep wasn't just a necessity, it was a divine trust. Galeen stands, brushes sand from her hands, and walks into the tide. She doesn't disappear, just becomes smaller, until you can't tell where she ends and the sea begins. You look at your lap. The shell is gone, but something has remained, a quiet you didn't know you were missing. And now, at long last, you're ready to let go. Final wind down, and now your eyes are soft, your limbs warm, heavier with stillness. The tide of your thoughts has pulled gently back, leaving behind only smooth little stones of memory. Let them stay there. Let them shimmer quietly, like stars sunk into sand. The journey you took tonight was slow, strange, and scented with the salt of old stories. You've walked through temples and taverns, listened to crabs judge your character, and learned that even sea nymphs get lonely enough to hum. You've wandered through a library made of scrolls and dreams, where lullabies were recorded like royal decrees and cats took their naps very seriously. And through it all, you listened. You let yourself float. You let yourself rest. Tonight, you remembered what myths are really for, not just drama or heroes, but comfort. A soft hand on your shoulder saying, "It's okay. You don't have to understand everything." You've learned that the first bedtime song may have come not from a cradle, but from a wave. Not sung to a baby, but to the stars above. Now, let the night fold itself around you like a worn tapestry. Let your thoughts drift to the edges of consciousness, like candle smoke curling towards sleep. There's no need to stay awake to prove you were here. You were, and that's enough. So close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the sea carry you. Let the scrolls whisper. Let the song of Galeen, calm, ancient, yours, rock you gently across the waves of sleep. We'll be here when you wake, and there will always be more stories to wander through. But for now, rest.